The research station Kepler-7 hung in the darkness like a wounded giant. Its metal hull glowed red-hot where the enemy weapons had torn through. Inside, the corridors filled with smoke and the screams of dying scientists. Dr. Unikale pressed, her back against the wall, as another explosion shook the station. Her crystalline skin, once beautiful like living diamond, now showed cracks from the intense heat. The Altarians were peaceful people, built for research and discovery, not war. Their 6 arms made them perfect for complex laboratory work, but terrible at fighting. Status report. She called into her communicator, but only static answered. The Vorthok had been hunting Federation research stations for months. But no one expected them to strike this far into safe space. Through the broken windows, she could see the enemy ships. It looked like massive insects made of black metal, their bioweapons glowing green as they prepared for another attack. The Vorthok were the nightmare of the galaxy, a species that consumed other worlds and turned their victims into weapons. Una crawled through the smoking corridor, her breathing apparatus filtering the toxic air. Around her, the station's emergency. Lights flickered like dying stars. She had to reach the communications array before the Vorthok destroyed it completely. The floor beneath her feet was hot enough to burn, but she kept moving. Her colleagues were depending on her, Dr. Kren. The elderly researcher who had taught her everything about xenobiology was trapped in the lower levels. The young students from the outer colonies were hiding in the storage bays, praying for rescue. She reached the communications room just as another bioweapon struck the station. The green plasma ate through the hull like acid, leaving holes that vented atmosphere into space. The emergency shields activated, but everyone knew they wouldn't last long. Emergency transmission. This is Kepler-7 research station, under attack by Vorthok forces. She gasped into the transmitter. Her voice was weak, but she forced the words out. We are a research facility, ... no weapons ... requesting immediate assistance. ... The station shuddered again. Through the static, she could hear the Vorthok ships closing in. Their insectoid voices filled the communication channels, speaking in their clicking language about harvest and consumption. Coordinates follow ... She whispered, transmitting their location into the void. Any Federation vessel ... please. We have civilians. Children ... A massive explosion cut her transmission short. The bioweapon had struck the communications tower directly, severing their link to the galaxy. Una was thrown across the room, her crystalline body cracking against the wall as she lost consciousness. She wondered if anyone would ever receive their call for help far across the galaxy. In a region of space marked as unexplored, the signal traveled through the darkness. It bounced off dead satellites and old relay stations. Carrying the desperate plea of a dying research station, Captain Hannah Kim sat in her command chair aboard the human exploration vessel Iron Will, studying star charts of the frontier. The ship was one of humanity's newest deep space explorers, built tough for the dangerous work of mapping unknown systems. Captain, Lieutenant June Park called from the communications station. I'm picking up something strange. Anna looked up from her reports. Park was young but sharp, one of the best communication officers in the fleet. If he said something was strange, it was worth investigating. What kind of strange? It's a distress signal, but the language ... Park frowned at his instruments. It's not human, not even close. The bridge fell silent. First contact protocols were clear. Any alien signal was to be reported immediately to Earth Command, but they were weeks away from the nearest human outpost. Play it, Hannah ordered. The alien voice filled the bridge, speaking in crystalline tones that sounded like music mixed with desperation. Even without understanding the words, everyone could hear the terror. Can you translate any of it? Hannah asked. Park worked his controls, running the signal through the ship's computer. Partial translation coming through. Research station. Under attack... requesting assistance. The crew exchanged glances. They had trained for this moment their entire careers, but no one expected it to happen like this. Where's it coming from? Hannah asked, calculating now. Park's fingers flew over his console. The signal is 18 hours old, but if we push the engines to maximum burn, We could reach the source in 18 hours. Hannah stared at the star chart. The coordinates were in unexplored space, far from any human settlement. Whatever was out, there they would be going in blind. Captain, her first officer said quietly. First contact protocols require us to report to Earth Command and wait for instructions. And how long would that take? 6 weeks? Minimum. Anna thought about the terror in that alien voice. 6 weeks would be far too late for whoever was calling for help. Ready all combat teams, she ordered. We're going to answer that distress call. The Iron Will turned toward the unknown, its engines burning bright as it raced to help strangers. In the darkness, the Iron Will tore through hyperspace like a bullet, its engines screaming at maximum power. Captain Hannah Kim gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered from the stress. They had been pushing the engines beyond safe limits for 17 hours straight. Hyperspace exit in 30 seconds, announced Lieutenant Park, sweat beading. On his forehead, all systems show green, but the engines are running hot. They'll hold, Hannah said with confidence she didn't entirely feel. Human ships were built tough. They weren't miracle machines. The stars stretched back to normal as they dropped into real space. What they saw made the entire bridge crew gasp. Kepler-VII research station hung before them like a broken toy. Its elegant crystalline structure, which must have been beautiful once, was now a burning wreck. Massive holes had been eaten through the hull, venting atmosphere and debris into space. The station's shields flickered weakly, like a candle about to die in the wind. But it was the ships surrounding the station that made Hannah's blood run cold. They looked like nightmares given form, massive insectoid vessels with organic curves and biomechanical weapons. The largest was easily 3 times the size of the Iron Will, its surface crawling with what looked like living metal.
Ow.
Green plasma dripped from weapon ports like toxic saliva. My God, whispered the weapons officer. What are those things? Hannah could answer. A harsh voice filled the bridge. The translator struggled with the alien language, but the meaning was clear enough. Unknown vessel, you will identify yourself immediately. This system is under Vorthok control. You will surrender your ship or be consumed. The communications officer looked at Hannah with wide eyes. Captain, they're scanning us. Their weapons are powering up. Hannah stood from her chair, her jaw set with determination. She had seen enough bullies in her life to recognize another one. The difference was, these bullies had picked on the wrong species. Open a channel to all frequencies, she ordered. Channel. Open, Captain. Hannah's voice rang across the void, clear and strong. This is Captain Hannah Kim of the Terran Defense Force. We received a distress call from this station, and we're here to help. We don't negotiate with bullies, and we sure as hell don't surrender to them. The alien response was immediate and furious. The largest Vorthok ship turned toward them, its bioweapons charging with an ominous green glow. Captain, they're targeting us, the tactical officer reported. Should I raise shields? Already up, Hannah replied. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. The Vorthok fired first. Streams of bioplasma shot across space, striking the Iron Will's hull with tremendous force. The ship rocked, but the damage reports were surprising. Hull integrity at 98%, reported the engineering officer, sounding confused. Captain, their weapons barely scratched our armor. Down in the Marine Bay, Sergeant Tay-1 was suiting up his boarding team when the ship was hit. He felt the impact, but noticed his feet stayed firmly planted. Grinned inside his combat helmet. Boys, looks like these bug faces designed their weapons for crystal people, not humans, he announced to his squad. Their plasma barely tickles our hull. Private Jin Lee checked his assault rifle one more time. Sarge, are we really going to board alien ships on our first day meeting aliens? That's exactly what we're going to do, one replied. These things are attacking defenseless researchers. Time to show them what happens when you mess with innocent people. On the bridge, Hannah watched the tactical display. The Vorthok ships were repositioning, clearly confused by the humans' ability to shrug off their primary weapons. Captain Park called out, I'm detecting life signs on the station. Faint, but there are survivors. That settled it for Hannah. Launch. All fighters and boarding pods. Target their weapon systems first. Then we board and disable their ships. Ma'am, we don't know anything about their internal layout or defensive systems, the tactical officer warned. Then we'll figure it out as we go, Hannah replied. That's what humans do best. The Iron Will's launch bays opened, releasing a swarm of fighters and boarding pods. The small craft moved with deadly precision. Weaving between the Vorthok ship's clumsy defensive fire, fighter pilot Commander Sun Kong led the attack, his squadron diving toward the largest enemy vessel. This is Wolf Leader, beginning attack. Run on the command ship. The human fighters were smaller and faster than anything the Vorthok had encountered. Their weapons, designed for piercing armored holes, cut through the biomechanical armor like hot knives through butter. Sergeant. One's boarding pod slammed into the side of a Vorthok cruiser, its drill bits tearing through the hull. The Marines poured through the breach, their assault rifles spitting fire. The corridor they entered was a nightmare of organic curves and pulsing biolights. The air was thick with toxic fumes that would have killed most species instantly. But human lungs, evolved on a world with volcanic gases and industrial pollution, filtered the poison without difficulty. "Contact front!" one shouted as the first Vorthok warriors appeared. They were massive insectoids, twice the size of humans. With razor-sharp claws and acid-spitting mandibles, the Marines opened fire. Their bullets designed to penetrate the toughest materials. The Vorthok, built to terrorize weaker species, had never faced opponents who fought back with such ferocity. Back on the bridge, Hannah watched the battle unfold. Her people were outnumbered 10-1, but they were winning. "Captain, the communications," officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the station. It's weak, but someone's alive in there." The voice that came through was barely a whisper, speaking in that musical alien language. The translator worked overtime to convert it to English. "Thank you, unknown warriors. We are Dr. Unikale.
Kepler 7.
Research station. Thought we would die? Double quotes. Hannah smiled grimly.
Oh.
Tell Dr. Kale that help has arrived. And tell her that humans don't leave anyone behind." The Iron Will pressed its attack, its weapons blazing as it showed the galaxy what happened when you threatened. Innocent people in front of humanity, Dr. Unikale dragged herself to the station's observation deck. Her crystalline body cracked and bleeding silver fluid. The emergency power flickered, casting strange shadows across the walls. Through the reinforced windows, she watched something that defied everything she knew about warfare. The human fighters moved like nothing she had ever seen, were Vorthok. Ships were massive and brutal, designed to crush opponents through sheer force. The human craft danced between them like leaves in a storm, spun and twisted, diving under the massive insectoid vessels and striking at weak points with surgical precision. "Impossible," she whispered, her 6 arms working the damage sensor controls. The readings showed the human ships were smaller, less armed, and outnumbered 5-1. By every rule of galactic warfare, they should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, they were winning. Commander Sun Kong rolled his fighter through a spiral that would have torn apart any Federation pilot. G-forces that should have knocked him unconscious barely made him grunt. Behind him, his wingman Jin Park followed the same impossible maneuver, their fighters moving like they were extensions of their own bodies. "Wolf 2, target their bioweapon ports," Kong ordered, lining up his shot on a Vorthok cruiser. "These bugs rely too much on their fancy plasma guns." "Copy that, Wolf Leader," Park replied, his fighter diving toward the enemy ship's underbelly. "Their armor is tough, but those weapon ports glow like targets." Human fighters unleashed their missiles in perfect coordination. The Vorthok ship's bioweapons exploded in chains of green fire, leaving the massive vessel defenseless. But it was what happened next that made Dr. Yuna's mind reel. Sergeant Taewan's boarding pod had attached to the Vorthok command ship like a parasite. The Marines cut through the hull with plasma torches, their equipment eating through biomechanical armor that should have been impenetrable. The moment they breached the hull, the Vorthok response was swift and terrifying. Bioweapons flooded the corridor with acid mist that could dissolve most known materials in seconds. The toxic cloud rolled toward the human marines like a green wave of death. Dr. Yuna watched the sensor readings in horror. "They're dead," she whispered. "Nothing survives direct exposure to Vorthok bioacid." But the humans kept moving. Through the poisonous mist came the sound of gunfire. Sergeant One's voice crackled over the radio. Calm and professional, despite breathing air that should have dissolved his lungs. "Acid in the corridor, but our filters are holding," he reported, moving to secure the ship's data core. The Marines advanced through the toxic environment like it was a mild inconvenience. Their armor showed signs of damage where the acid ate. At the outer layers, but underneath they remained protected. More importantly, they remained fighting. Private Boshin kicked down a door to find 3 Altarian scientists cowering in a storage room. The crystalline beings were barely alive. Their bodies cracked from exposure to the ship's hostile environment. "Don't worry," Bo said in broken Federation standard. His voice filtered through his helmet. "We're here to help." One of the scientists, a young researcher named Kess, stared at the human in amazement. The Marine's left arm hung at an odd angle, clearly broken, yet he used his right hand to lift her to safety, while simultaneously returning fire at approaching Vorthok warriors. "How are you still functional?" Kess asked weakly. "Your arm. ... This Bo glanced at his broken limb and shrugged. "I've had worse. Broke both legs in training once and still finished the mission." He carried her toward the breach point, shooting, one-handed at the insectoid aliens trying to stop them. Behind him, the other scientists followed, supported by more Marines who seemed to ignore injuries that would have incapacitated any other species. Dr. Yuna watched through the sensors as the humans did something even more incredible. When the Vorthok tried to vent atmosphere to kill the boarders, the Marines simply sealed their helmets and kept fighting in the vacuum. But instead of retreating, they used the decompression as a weapon. Sergeant One's team had reached the ship's power core when the Vorthok opened all the airlocks at once. The sudden rush of escaping atmosphere should have sucked everyone into space instead. One grabbed an emergency explosive and threw it at a critical junction. Fire in the hole. The explosion ruptured the ship's internal bulkheads. The Vorthok warriors, not equipped for sudden decompression, were pulled screaming into the void. The humans trained for zero-gravity combat used the chaos to advance deeper into the ship. How do they move so well in vacuum? Dr. Yuna asked herself, watching human Marines leap from handhold to handhold like they were born in space. What she didn't know was that humans had been preparing for space warfare longer than most species had known space existed. Every human. The child grew up hearing stories of brave astronauts and lunar miners. Zero gravity wasn't alien to them. It was just another environment to master. Private Jin Lee found himself floating in the ship's central hub, surrounded by floating debris and confused Vorthok soldiers. While the insectoids struggled to orient themselves, he used his magnetic boots to anchor himself to a bulkhead and picked off targets with careful shots. "The bugs can't handle zero-G," he reported. "They're designed for high-gravity worlds. There's no balance in vacuum." Meanwhile, Sergeant Wan had reached the ship's computer core. The biomechanical system pulsed with alien intelligence, but Wan wasn't intimidated. He plugged in a human data extractor and began downloading everything. "Ma'am, we've secured the research data," he reported to Captain Kim. "These bug things weren't expecting anyone to fight back this hard. Their tactics are all about intimidation and overwhelming force. They don't know how to handle opponents who won't break." Dr. Yuna listened to the transmission, her scientific mind racing. The humans fought like no species she had ever studied. They adapted to every environment, turned disadvantages into advantages, and simply refused to give up. As she watched the human Marines fight their way back to their boarding pods, carrying rescued scientists and captured data, she realized something that would change galactic history. The universe had just met its new apex predators, and they had announced themselves. By answering a cry for help, the space around Kepler 7 suddenly filled with new arrivals as more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. But these weren't military vessels. They were civilian ships that had heard the iron Will's emergency broadcast and come running. The Soul's Pride had been carrying grain to the outer colonies when Captain Minho Choi received the distress call. Now the cargo ship bristled with hastily welded weapon mounts and armor plating. Mining lasers meant for cutting asteroids had been repositioned as main guns. "This is Soul's pride to Iron Will," Minho's voice crackled over the radio. "We brought friends." Behind his ship came the Busan Hammer, a massive mining vessel that dwarfed even the Vorthok cruisers. Its industrial lasers could slice through solid rock, and Captain Yansu had no doubt they would work just as well on alien hull plating. "Busan Hammer reporting for duty," she announced. These bugs picked the wrong fight. Even the colony transport New Jeju had arrived, its civilian passengers now armed with hunting rifles and mining equipment. Captain Dae Kim had never expected to take his passenger ship into battle, but when he heard that aliens were attacking innocent researchers, he couldn't stay away. "New Jeju's standing by," he reported. "We've got 300 volunteers ready to board those ships if needed." Dr. Yuna watched the growing human fleet with amazement. Through the damaged sensors, she could see the improvised nature of their weapons, the civilian markings still visible on hulls now covered with armor plates. These weren't professional soldiers. They were ordinary people who had dropped everything to help strangers. "Captain Choi," she called over the communication link, her translator working to convert her crystalline speech to human language. "I'm Dr. Yuna Kale, the station's chief researcher. Thank you for coming to our aid." Minho's face appeared on her screen, weathered features showing both determination and kindness. "Doctor, we heard your people were in trouble. Humans don't ignore distress calls." "But you're risking everything," Yuna said, still struggling to understand. "We're complete strangers to you. Your species and mine have never even met before." "Doesn't matter," Minho replied simply. "Right is right and wrong is wrong. These Vorthok things are attacking defenseless researchers. That makes it our business." The conversation was interrupted as the Vorthok fleet regrouped for another assault. The insectoid ships had been caught off guard by human tactics, but they still outnumbered the defenders 3-1. "All human vessels. This is Captain Kim." Hannah's voice cut through the radio chatter. "Form up for a coordinated attack. Soul's pride. Use those mining lasers on their command ship. Busan Hammer. Target their weapon systems. Ujeju. Stay back and be ready for evacuation runs." "Negative on staying back," Captain Day replied firmly. "My passengers didn't come here to hide. We're going in with everyone else." The combined human fleet moved forward like a pack of wolves. The Soul's Pride led the charge, its improvised weapons blazing. The mining lasers cut through Vorthok armor like it was paper, sending chunks of biomechanical hulls spinning into space. Captain Yansu piloted the Busan Hammer with the skill of someone who had spent decades maneuvering around dangerous asteroid fields. Her massive ship bulldozed through the Vorthok formation, its industrial equipment tearing enemy vessels apart. "These mining tools work pretty good on bugs," she announced cheerfully, using a plasma cutter designed for asteroid mining to slice a Vorthok fighter in half. Dr. Yuna coordinated with the human fleet from her damaged station, providing intelligence about Vorthok weaknesses her people had discovered during the long siege. "Captain Choi," she called out, "their command ship has vulnerable points near the bioweapon clusters. If you can disable those, they lose most of their offensive capability." "Copy that," Dr. Minho replied, Soul's Pride moving to attack position. But it was what happened next that truly amazed her. She watched human crews board Vorthok vessels that were flooding with toxic gas. The insectoid ships used poison as a standard defensive measure, releasing clouds of chemicals that would kill most Federation species in seconds. The humans kept fighting anyway. "Your people fight like demons," she said in wonder, watching Marines advance through corridors filled with lethal fumes. "How do you survive what kills us in seconds?" Minho's laugh was grim, but proud. "Doctor, we're from a world that's been trying to kill us since we crawled out of the oceans. Poisonous plants, deadly animals, toxic gases from volcanoes, radiation from space. Our planet taught us to survive anything. We don't die easy." On the Iron Will, Captain Hannah Kim was leading her own boarding party toward the Vorthok command ship. The massive vessel was the size of a small city, its biomechanical corridors pulsing with alien life. Teams Alpha and Bravo. "Take the lower decks," she ordered, her assault rifle ready. "Charlie team, you're with me. We're going for the bridge." The Vorthok had learned from their earlier encounters and flooded the corridors with their most potent bioweapons. Acid mists that could eat through steel, toxic spores that attacked the nervous system, poisonous gases that shut down most forms of life. Hannah's team advanced through it all, their equipment filtering the worst of the toxins while their enhanced immune systems dealt with the rest. When bioacid ate through her armor and burned into her shoulder, she gritted her teeth and kept moving. "Captain, you need medical attention?" Sergeant Juan called out, seeing the acid wound spreading across her uniform. "After we finish the job," Hannah replied. Using her good arm to blast through a sealed door, they fought their way, deck by deck, toward the bridge, leaving a trail of defeated Vorthok warriors behind them. Insectoids fought with desperate fury. Unable to understand how these strange mammals could survive their most devastating weapons, finally, they reached the command center. The Vorthok commander was waiting, a massive creature twice the size of a human, with razor-sharp claws and mandibles that dripped toxic venom. "Impossible," the alien hissed, its translator rendering the words in harsh, clicking tones. "Nothing survives our bioweapons. Nothing defeats the Vorthok war machine." Hannah raised her weapon, ignoring the pain in her wounded shoulder. Around her, the surviving members of her boarding party took aim at the alien commander. She said, her voice steady despite her injuries, "You thought we were like everyone else you've bullied. You thought we'd break and run when things got tough." The Vorthok commander's compound eyes glittered with rage and confusion. "What are you? What species dares to challenge the might of the Vorthok Empire?" Hannah smiled, and there was nothing friendly about it. "We're not just anything. We're human. And humans protect the innocent no matter the cost." The final battle for the command ship was about to begin. The Vorthok command ship's bridge erupted in chaos as Captain Hannah Kim's boarding party stormed through the final blast doors. The massive alien commander, its chitinous armor cracked and leaking green fluid, backed toward the ship's escape pods. "You have doomed your entire species?" the creature hissed, its compound eyes reflecting pure hatred. "The Vorthok Empire will hunt you across the galaxy. Your worlds will burn." Hannah wiped bioacid from her visor, her wounded shoulder throbbing with each heartbeat. "Good luck with that. Couldn't handle one research station's worth of humans. What makes you think you can handle all of us?" The alien commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or rage. "You know nothing of our power. We've consumed 1,000 worlds, enslaved entire species. You are nothing but primitives from an unknown system." "Maybe," Hannah replied, keeping her weapon trained on the creature. "But these primitives just kicked your army's ass." Through the command ship's viewing ports, they could see the remains of the Vorthok fleet limping away into hyperspace. The massive biomechanical vessels that had seemed so terrifying just hours ago now looked like broken toys trailing atmosphere and debris. The Soul's Pride and Busan Hammer moved among the wreckage, rescuing survivors and securing alien technology. Captain Minho's Choi's voice crackled over the radio. "Iron Will, this is Soul's Pride. We've got 23 Federation survivors aboard, including some badly injured Altarians. They're asking for someone called Dr. Yuna. Tell them she's safe," Hannah replied. "We'll rendezvous at the station for medical treatment." The Vorthok commander reached its escape pod, but before entering, it turned back to face the humans one final time. "This is not over, Deathworld demons. The Empire will remember what you have done here." "Make sure they do," Hannah said calmly. "And make sure they remember what happens when you attack innocent people." The alien fled into space, leaving behind a command ship full of intelligence, data, and a galaxy-changing discovery. 3 days later, Kepler 7 station buzzed with activity as human and Federation crews worked together to repair the damage. The crystalline corridors, once elegant and peaceful, now showed the scars of battle. But they also showed something new: humans and aliens working side by side. Dr. Yuna stood in her rebuilt laboratory, dictating her report to the Federation Council. Her 6 arms moved gracefully over holographic displays showing combat footage and biological data. "Species designation human requires immediate reclassification," she spoke into the recorder. previous assumptions about carbon-based life limitations are fundamentally incorrect. These beings demonstrate unprecedented adaptability, resilience, and tactical innovation. She paused the recording to watch Captain Kim walk past her window. The human leader's arm was still in a regeneration sleeve, but she moved with the same confident stride that had carried her through the Vorthok command ship. Personal note, Una continued. In 40 years of xenobiology research, I have never encountered a species that fights not for conquest or resources, but purely to protect strangers. The humans answered our distress call despite having no obligation. To do so, they risked their lives for people they had never met. Captain Kim entered the laboratory, followed by several Federation dignitaries who had arrived that morning. The Altarian Council representative, an ancient being with crystalline features that sparkled like diamonds, bowed deeply to the human captain. Captain Kim, the counselor said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Federation, I extend our deepest gratitude. Your actions have saved not just this station, but potentially countless lives throughout Federation space. Hannah looked uncomfortable with the formal praise. We just did what anyone would do. We heard people calling for help. That is where you are wrong, Dr. Yuna interjected gently. Most species would have reported the signal to their governments and waited for orders. You chose to act immediately, despite the personal risk. The Federation counselor nodded agreement, which brings us to our formal proposal. The Federation would like to offer humanity full membership status. Along with mutual defense agreements and technology-sharing treaties, Lieutenant Park, monitoring communications from the Iron Will, suddenly looked up from his console. Captain, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The news about the battle is spreading fast. What kind of transmissions? Hannah asked. Well, the Vorthok are broadcasting warnings about Deathworld demons and the species that cannot be killed. But other civilizations are responding differently. The Zephyrian Trade Union wants to hire human security forces. The Outer Rim colonies are requesting human protection from pirates. No. Dr. Yuna pulled up a galactic map showing communication intercepts. Red dots indicated Vorthok positions, now retreating from previously held territories. Green dots showed Federation worlds, many of which were broadcasting requests for human contact. Your species has achieved something remarkable, she explained to Captain Kim. For the first time in recorded history, the Vorthok Empire is retreating. They've abandoned 3 conquered systems in the past 2 days alone. Captain Minho entered the laboratory, his weathered face breaking into a grin. Captain Kim, I just got word from Earth Command. They're sending a full diplomatic mission, along with the 5th Fleet for protection. Seems like our little rescue. Mission has caught some attention back home. The entire galaxy is talking about humanity, the Federation counselor added. Some species are curious, others are cautious, but all are impressed. The Vorthok were considered unstoppable, he proved. That wrong? Hannah walked to the laboratory's viewing port. Looking out at the stars where her ship and the other human vessels were docked alongside Federation craft, human and alien crew members worked together, sharing techniques and stories. I never expected first contact to happen like this, she admitted. We were just exploring, mapping new systems. Now we're apparently galactic peacekeepers. Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needed, Dr. Yuna suggested. A species that explores not to conquer, but to help. Warriors who fight not for glory, but for justice? Lieutenant Park's voice interrupted from the communicator. Captain, Earth Command is on the priority channel. They want a full briefing on the situation. Tell them we've made some new friends, Hannah replied, and that the galaxy just got a lot smaller. Over the following weeks, as human diplomats and Federation representatives worked out the details of their new alliance, stories of the Battle of Kepler-7 spread throughout known space. The Vorthok Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, found itself facing something they had never encountered before. Species that wouldn't surrender. Warriors who fought harder when the odds were against them. Protectors who would cross the galaxy to answer a stranger's call for help. The humans had arrived on the galactic stage. They had announced themselves not as conquerors, but as guardians. In the depths of Vorthok space, ancient war queens listened to the reports with growing unease. Oh, for the first time in their species' history, They felt something they had never experienced before. Fear the galaxy had new protectors, and they were just getting started. The end.